I remember the first time that I ever stretched a canvas. I wasn't even in art school yet. I was in my art club back in high school, and we were tasked to stretch a canvas for a painting that we need to pass for a requirement. That canvas was so sloppily made, and I had no idea what I was doing. Fast forward 3 years, I entered into an art school, and I was surprised to encounter canvas making back then. I used to think that I should just buy everything pre-made. We were given a lesson on canvas making, and I just, in one way or another, fell in love with the process of making my own surfaces. In this video, I want to show you how I make my own canvases and the process behind some of my work. So for these two canvases, I decided to reuse the old stretchers from my old paintings in school. These are just paintings that I did for a requirement. They don't hold any emotional attachment. And frankly, I don't think that these are my original works because back then I just randomly picked reference photos from Pinterest and I made the work. I start by removing each and every staple behind the paintings. It's a process, and I do it slowly and carefully. I then remove the paintings. These paintings on unstretched canvas can be rolled and put into storage. After that, I focus on cleaning the frames. I sand the wood and I apply some 2-part epoxy on the rusty nails. This is to prevent the rust on adhering on the new canvas cloth that I will later stretch onto this frame. The epoxy will dry really slow, so by this time I'm going to be preparing the cloth. I like to cut the cloth about 2 to 3 inches more than the frame size. My favorite motto is to measure twice and cut once. I cut with an allowance so that I can pull the cloth more effectively. And if I measured enough, I wouldn't have to over pull or to exert any more effort in cutting another cloth if it doesn't fit. After that, I like to take a break. Stretching canvases is a piece of work. I take my lunch first before doing that kind of activity. I also want to share my mini kitchen in my studio. I just set it up and I got this new boiler. And my boiler can cook rice. And I kind of want to experiment on this. So let's see. It's very relaxing to cook while doing work. I am cooking vegetable rice with egg and fish cake.
As we got older, you left me on your bedroom floor. It got much colder since we found out who we were. If you needed proof, you never choose to follow through. Where were you? Okay, sometimes I shake a little, sometimes it's all alright. But when the devil visits and me and Jesus fight over endless conversations, I never sleep on time. As we got older, you left me on your bedroom floor. It got much colder since we found out who we were. If you needed proof, you never choose to follow through. Where were you? In the wrong direction. We're moving at the speed of light.
So now we start stretching. The things we need are a gun tucker, staples, a piece of wood, and a sprayer with water. The secret to my style is the sprayer. Let's start. First, don't imitate me. Check if the gun tucker has some staples before using it. If not, then put some staples and get ready. I start stretching my canvas by first putting 4 anchor points located at the center of each side. It will create a diamond-like stretch along the canvas. I call them anchor points because these are just temporary staples that holds each side at place as you pick a quadrant to work with. With any canvas, no matter how big or small, I like to separate it into smaller quadrants. Here I'm doing the half of a longer side. Then after this, I will pull the other side of this quadrant. I don't staple all of the sides completely because I learned that if I do that early on, I would only remove them again and re-pull, so I take my time with it. After picking a quadrant, it's all about form now. Pull with your dominant hand, in my case it's my right hand, and hold the canvas with the less dominant hand, which is my left hand. Pull in a check-like pattern, driving your force from the middle and then pulling the cloth sideways to create a check-like pattern. If you notice that it's so hard to pull apart or a side, spray some water. Don't spray too much though, just enough for the canvas to be elastic. Spray and continue to pull. If you have further problems pulling, attach the extra cloth to a piece of wood and use that to anchor the stretcher. Stretching canvases is about balance and repetition. You need to do it repeatedly at every side until you achieve a certain balance with the cloth. The goal is to have the cloth stiff and taut. Before closing each side, I like to check if the middle part is starting to sound like a drum when I flick it, like this. This sound tells me that a side is completely stretched. If not, I release the staple and re-stretch again. When I'm happy with them at each side, I will close them by this common folding technique. It's the same concept for every size of canvas. Start in smaller parts and work your way as you finish the entire thing. Troubleshooting is easy when you understand how the force of your pull affects the way the canvas is stretched. When the water from the sprayer dries, it will become more tight. Sometimes, especially in damp weather, some parts of the cloth will not dry straight and you will have to re-staple them and re-pull. The more times you do it, it will get better, it will lessen, and troubleshooting is just part of the process. I really enjoy this process of making the canvases even if I'm not painting yet. The canvas is the foundation of the painting. So in terms of longevity and the quality, it's important to understand how all things begin, and stretching is important so that the painting won't sag with any weather or condition. Especially for me, my canvas are designed not to have any wood backings since I sew items on them. I really need to make it tight, and a good quality stretched canvas starts with stretching. Now that I have finished stretching them, I will prepare my space for priming. Priming is the last step of this process. Usually, people prime their canvases in a very straightforward way, but since becoming more involved with mixed media materials such as beads and glitters, a professor back in school recommended that I need to think about my priming more. Priming ensures that my canvas will be stable and the materials that I will put above this layer will stay put as long as it can. The stretched cloth will not hold paint well. So in order to ensure long full strokes of rich paint, a canvas needs to be primed. If you search online about priming, there are multiple ways of priming and it always changes with the material. As an example is the way on how you would prime an oil painting. It would be different from an acrylic painting. And the reason for that is these two mediums are different as they dry throughout time. So please take that in mind. I will post some links to some sources as to how to prime. This is just my personal way of doing things. My way of priming is in 3 stages, comprising of about 9 to 10 layers of medium. It kind of depends on what the actual work will be. If it's just an acrylic painting, I'll use less, but since this is a mixed media painting, I'll probably need to use a bit more so that it would be quite stable. I like to first size my canvas, then apply thin layers of paint and then thicker layers of paint with sanding in between. I will post the layer details on the upper right hand of this video. Sizing is a way to ensure that the cloth will be stable, that it would not move so much with the weather. Popular sizing mediums are the Gamblin PVA size, common PVA glue, or the more expensive animal hide based glues. Since this is for a mixed media painting with more acrylic based materials, I use a mixture of PVA glue and water. I apply it in thin layers, starting with a thinner PVA consistency, then followed by thicker ones. As I finish sizing my canvas, I would also notice that the canvas is becoming more tighter. This is also helpful if I accidentally hit the canvas and a dent is made. The sizing medium helps as the dent heals and the canvas goes back into its original shape. After this, I apply thin mixtures of water and paint. There is a debate about gesso and latex paint. For me, they are almost the same material but each to their own. I find gesso to be very chalky and it can crack if you put too much. Latex paint, on the other hand, appears to be more pliable and cost-friendly. In the future, if I have the budget, I'd like to explore materials like other gesso brands to see if it's not chalky. But for now, as my budget allows me, I use latex paint. Latex paint is a commercial product, but many artists use it around the world as a priming base. It will last, as some artist tells me, but I think in the future I'd like to test other things out. For now, I think about application. No matter how expensive a material is, if you don't use it correctly, it will crack or it won't work. For priming with paint, you need to apply it thinly and layer by layer. Take your time. And the general rule is fat over lean, meaning leaner consistency with water first and then thicker layers of paint as you progress. So with the paint part, I apply the most diluted paint until I reach a thicker consistency. This is about at layer 10. Then I would start to sand. As I reach the final layers of thicker paint, I will sand it per layer. So this is about the last 4 layers. And the reason for that is to add tooth and texture to the layer. And the thicker paint will stick well if it has more texture. After this, the canvas is ready. After that long process, it's ready. And the only thing that you will need to remember is that it needs a proper drying time because of all the layers and all that water. Now, I will only wait for about 72 hours or 24 hours depending on the weather, if it's dry. And yeah, I would start painting. Some artists like to prime and stretch at the start of the year, and they use the canvas as the year progresses. A professor of mine said that a canvas gets better as it dries. So be sure to give that prime canvas enough time to dry. As this video ends, the last thing that I would like to share are some of the materials that I bought. I bought a lot of bulk gems and beads for my work, and they really look so pretty, so here they are. While editing this video, I've been reminded so much of the things that I really find enjoyable. A lot of people think that painting starts with the first stroke, but for me, it really doesn't. I think that the painting starts with the first idea and the first time that you feel like you're making something, and then when you actually make it, you make it from scratch. And then you build up upon that and you trust the process. And I think that's the beauty of the creative process. People create and they do it in their own way. So I hope that you were able to get some knowledge from this video, and thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.